Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. You are about to join a frequency that will open your mind, expand your heart, and activate your spirit. Thank you for joining Kelly Meehan, Spirit Baby Medium and Master Energy Therapist. Kelly believes in the power of the Spirit Baby. She speaks with babies in spirit before life, in the womb, and after life. She supports, teaches, and guides others to tune into the intuitive and mystical parts of life for greater wisdom. Join her in meeting your soul baby and build your connection and relationship with deep love and trust. Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio with your host, Spirit Baby Medium, Kelly.
Welcome to episode 141, June 24th, 2022. Radical Self-Love, Pregnancy Intuition, and Visualization. How can you be with a trusting, intuitive pregnancy? What inspirations can deepen and shape your trimesters? How do you embrace fear and move with joy and love? How do you create with your baby being? I have a special guest here. It's Crystal. Hello.
Hi.
I'm going to read Crystal's, my special guest here, her little bio, and then I love to always talk about how do I know these people? What's happening? Where are we meeting? So Crystal I didn't ask her about her last name. Say your last name, please. Tramella?
It could be Trammell or Trammell.
Okay, there you go. I usually do. Darn it, I always do that in the beginning, and I forgot. Crystal Tramella.
That's okay.
Trammell is a holistic birth keeper, free thinker, and homesteading hippie at heart. She lives in Central Texas, unschooling her children, planting gardens, and making art. And I feel like I was just joking with Crystal before we were chatting, and I was like, gosh, I feel like I've talked to you and I know her, but we do have a link in between people, but I feel like it was many years ago, and I've just I adore her blog, and that was the thing we've been connecting about, and Crystal, what we're going to get deeper into, but she has so many really amazing things when it comes to conception, pregnancy, birth, motherhood, parenthood, and I love that hippie at heart. And you have, you have the experience of children to validate your journey. And how many children do you have?
I have 5. They are my greatest teachers.
Yeah, get a pro. There we go. And so, again, it's interesting how I feel like I know someone, but I'm like, I feel like we've been talking for years, like in different ways.
Yeah, I think we have.
And I'm like surprised you weren't here on the podcast, but like years ago. That's why I was like, wait a minute, that's what it feels like in my reality. But I want to kind of jump in, maybe share a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. I've just, I've been involved in the birth space for a long time, and from my very first baby, almost 23 years ago, I just knew that, the way that modern birth was handled was definitely not for me, and so I had him in a birthing center, and through all those experiences, I really just, kind of refined kind of everything I'm doing about mothering and birth and all of this is just, it's different. And it kind of felt like swimming upstream for a long time. Things that are more accepted now, for instance, like baby wearing. It was just so weird 20 years ago. It was not, there were so many things that were, I really had to be kind of grounded in who I was and the kind of parent I wanted to be pretty early on. And I had my first kiddo when I was 18, so I really, didn't know what I was doing. It was a steep learning curve from the get-go.
Yeah. It's so true what you say. You're like talking about 2 decades ago. Even 10 years ago, it was still weird. And I live in the big city. It was I couldn't imagine going back, back then, how the system was probably more like, okay, we're going to do this and that. And, you're kind of learning along the way, or you're going, I don't like that. I don't want to do that. Right.
Yeah. Well, and I was young, and this is rural Texas, just get in line. And it took a lot to be like, no, I won't, thank you.
Yeah. And so I love this.
Then,
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no.
No, you go.
Well, just the at some point, I think it must have been in 2010, is when I really was introduced to some lovely researchers, Neil and Elizabeth Carmen, and I helped them with a lot of their work on pre-birth communication, and I believe they introduced me to your work. So I think we really have been talking since like 2010. Just I bought the first copy of your Spirit Baby cards. And I think I also bought your cesarean guide way back, how to have like.
Oh wow, that's when the cards were like printed on. That's when the cards were printed on like paper. Is that what the ones you got that I like print on my printer? Right? Is that what you're talking about?
I think it might have been that.
The purple covers. Purple cards.
It was the purple covers. Okay, so it was the second edition, but I still have those.
Well,
somewhere
I had
in my
like
house.
a really weak first. No, that's kind of like the first edition. Yeah, the pre-birth communication cards. I love it. That's so fun to hear that.
And it was just, I wasn't even pregnant at the time. I was just like, I love what this person's doing. I have to support her work.
Yeah.
And then I ended up, I've used those with various folks that I've just, come in contact with and just kind of been intuitively led to, hey, do you want to do an oracle reading, but like with your baby? And so that's been it's been fun. And it seems like the people who are open to that kind of thing are, tend to be drawn to me anyway. So.
I love that. Yeah, that's so fun to hear that. I know we had that link between, pre-birth communication researcher, conscious life before working on that level. And so this is where we have this link. But I know you've done so many amazing things throughout the years. I've seen your website and I know your work for a very long time. As I said, it's one of the blogs I connect with energetically, especially. I was like, what is this? I want to keep reading all this stuff. And I'm like, there's so much to read out there. It just feels very genuine. It feels genuine to me. And that's what I'm really, that's what I feel like we're moving into, really, new world living. It's like really being genuine, even in the fear, right? Even in the love. And
for sure, yeah.
I want to talk about your book. A book, a workbook, has many different dimensions to it. And I have the title here, The Conscious Pregnancy Guidebook, Reawakening Our Feminine Wisdom Through Birth and Mothering. And I know we talked a little bit before. It's like, this book is like, it's just so fun and beautiful. And I love that, you can share more about it, but I know you shared the art in there, and it feels personal. It's not just, I'm going to read this book with instructions. What is the intentional energy behind the book?
So when I started writing the book, it poured out of me unbidden, and it was with the energy of that I wanted a book to be a stand-in for like women who didn't have good support, women who felt like they were facing, alternative choices in childbirth and didn't have anybody in their physical, real world to talk to about, feeling like the odd one out or wanting reassurance, wanting, they didn't have maybe like a wise woman or a sage or a grandmother type person who would validate that, yes, it's, totally normal and good and healthy to want to connect with your baby and to view this whole process as sacred and not just, a medical procedure or like a disease. Birth is very much treated like pathology in most modern settings, which is just so many levels of wrong. And so I wanted this book to be like a cherished friend, or like I want it to feel like you're sitting down with like a grandmother midwife who's offering you tea and support. And yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Tea and support, the electricity. That's the vibe I got from it, because, again, it's not
That's so good.
this over-clinicalized manual that here's what you need to do. And I feel like we're so, like, brainwashed into, I don't know, step in the line, don't step out of the line, But I think now more it's probably people are questioning that, after 2020, it's good. People are shaken up and woken up. It's like, okay. Especially I've always had heart with the maternity care system being a big mess. And I know there's always trying to improve it, all these midwives, birth advocates, doulas, because I call myself a birth advocate. I'm not a midwife, I'm not a doula, but they all come to me and I love them. And but I'm like, what are they doing to, like, the system is like, sometimes it just spits them back out and goes, okay, we're not gonna, and then there's little pieces of bend. But it's true what you say is like, when did being pregnant become a sickness or a disease? And that's not okay, you know, and that's still really present, right? Would you say that's still really present?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that there's so much fear. There's so much fear, and there's so much energy of submission and, you know, looking for an expert who will tell you exactly how things are going to go. And the entire thing of pregnancy is surrender to the grand unknown and connect with the divine cosmic blueprint that you don't get to know. You don't know the whole, you know, the million threads that are spinning together as we speak it into existence. We don't, you know, it's not something that we can just say, okay, well, if you do these things and this is the outcome, and, you know, the only thing that matters is a healthy baby. Like, no. None of that.
Yeah, I love how you said that. I was like, this is why I love her energy. I love when you said that. I felt it. Like, oh yeah, it's like, I see a lot of pregnant women throughout the years, and their biggest thing is around fear. And you know, and I always tell some women, I'm like, they're like, well, what do you? Sometimes some women will say, well, you tell me, Kelly, what is your thoughts and ideas? I go, do you want my, like, felt sense opinion? And I'm very clear about reading energy intuitively, in my opinion. I'm very clear about that because I know that people have their own inner mapping and they have to find their way. I said, well, I go, yeah, pregnancy is highly intuitive, and even when you need to run and get those tests, and some people are obsessive and abusive with the tests, and other people, you're allowed to say no, actually, to a lot of things. And you're allowed to own and be in your body. And I don't feel like we're in a culture like that. As you just said, it's like we want all the answers. We're scared. We see very scary images. But it's like I love how you said about weaving it. It's like there's all these different parts, and you're kind of you can't know everything. And I think that's the consciousness we need to set up for women, right? It's like move into the unknownness and be in your intuitive center. It's like that's not, I feel like, embraces what I've seen. Doesn't mean it's not without worry, fear, and other stuff, right?
Right, exactly. It's about not identifying yourself with those worries and fears. And one thing that really fascinates me is I have a free product on my website, and it's called Releasing Birth Fears. And it's like, you know, it's like a free, like, taster for my, and I thought that it would really land with people, but I have realized since I have published it that women don't think they're afraid. They don't perceive like all of the control stuff that all the anxiousness and all the I need answers and I want the ultrasound and I need to know and the test results. They don't even connect that to that it is an underlying sense of fear or, you know, and so that, like, people don't really necessarily resonate with that. And so maybe I need to figure out, like, a different way of explaining that, because people are like, I'm not afraid. I just need all these answers. And I'm like,
right. This is good. Let's talk about this, because I know women are tuning in right now going, oh, crap, that's me. And I like to spotlight it is that when I'm in private session with a pregnancy session, which is different than a conception session, and a pregnancy session, one of the things I look at is the fear, the worry, the doubt, and the embodiment piece, right? And so that's a really good thing you're saying, because it's like, it's almost like, oh yeah, what do you mean getting obsessive ultrasounds, you're doing this. And everybody is different, because I know some people who have, birth losses and different medical interventions, they're going to be hypervigilant, they're going to be fearful, and they're going to want to be obsessed, or their environment is going to tell them, we need to do this. But even as I say that, it's still an intuitive process. It really is, right? No matter what. And so
exactly. Getting a test back where the results are, questionable or something, you can choose to latch on to that in a fearful state, or you can choose to, take it in as information, and, it's just one piece of the puzzle, and it doesn't define, like people are trying to diagnose things like placenta previa at 20 weeks. I'm like, that's only halfway through.
Yeah.
You've got so much, like, every moment things are changing. And, like, we know this is the most rapid time of growth and change.
Yes.
And so identifying with something, you know, some kind of, like, pathology about it, it's just, okay, well, this is how it is in this moment. This is how it is right now. This does not define what's going to happen in another 20 weeks. And so, you know, holding things lightly.
That's the thing. Yeah, and that's the thing that's really, cause this is where I feel like having in that intuitive pregnancy, really in conception, who are you, where's your heart, know who you are, because I know in both of my births with the midwives, and then actually was midwife's doctor with the second, because I with the birth part I had to transfer, long story. I've sprinkled it throughout the podcast. I didn't have to go, but it was like the midwife was not maybe the best choice. And so, but I did what I did with those things. Yeah. Yeah. And so, but in the process of both these pregnancies, I don't want to do that. And I was respected on one level. Well, I feel like with I'll talk about the more recent. It's like, we want to do, can we do this test towards the end? I think they do a swab to look for, what is it?
Like GBS or something.
Yeah. And I said, I don't want to do anything. Like, and I'm very open about that. I don't do any intervention. I do one sonogram.
Yeah.
And we did the second time with a doctor, which is Dr. Stu, who's like really well-known home birth doctor, like in this area, and he has a podcast too, and he's just really great. And I had him do it with the midwives, and then he just did one and said, you don't ever have to, like, we're good. Like, there's nothing, because we wanted to look at the placenta, because in the first time there was speculation, but it was totally wrong anyways. It didn't matter. But it was like, okay. And so I did my one intervention, and then with that last test, the swab, it's very, in a lot of midwifery work, you're doing it. You're like, here's the swab. You go do it on yourself in the bathroom or whatever, because it's about that. And so apparently I did it wrong. But I don't know. I'm like, but I remember the midwife, and I love her, said to me, she said to me, well, this would make me feel better. And I'm like, well, at least you identify that, like, as it's about you, it's not about me, But I was like, okay, that's not a big deal. But I don't like poking and prodding and go, and I'm going, this is the piece I feel like we don't talk enough about, right? It's like the conversations, like in the book, like it's, connecting with other women in a more casual, real way. And I've always found, I don't know about you, but my best wisdom has come from other mothers in nursing.
Oh, definitely.
And, vaginal care when after birth, like it came from those women,
Yes. And, for so many of us, our mother lines have been messed with, broken, severed. We don't have, we can't go ask our mother or our grandmother because of things like twilight birth. And, like we don't remember, they don't know, like these lineages have been severed. And so who do we ask? We have to, when I had my first 3 babies, really, my first 3, it was my first one, there wasn't really any, online support. And then when I had my third one, I had a wild pregnancy. I was planning an unassisted birth, and I felt like the only people that I could talk to about anything real were on forums. They were on the mothering.com forums.
Wow,
this was pre-social media. And those women were, an anchor of support. I never even saw their faces, but we exchanged birth beads. I still have a beautiful necklace that we all had beads, and it was maybe, 25 women or something, and we all bought a bead that symbolized something that we wanted to like impart to each other for our birth experience. And I still have that. I wore it like as a talisman when I was giving birth, even though I ended up in a horrific hospital birth. And that story's on my blog. I don't recommend you read that one first. I actually ended up, I wrote basically a fairy tale of her birth as part of my healing of that story, because the practical aspects of her birth were not, they were traumatic. It was heavy and sad. Even though it was a quote-unquote natural birth, there was a lot that went with it because of where I was birthing and because of the lack of support. But so I wrote her a fairy tale birth instead. and that I could read to her
that.
as a toddler, and it was, you know,
wow.
the baby was, and so
that's
that
really
might really
great.
resonate
I like
with
that.
your audience.
Fairy tale. I've never heard that, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
Now I'm going to be like
it,
fairy tale birth, quote, Crystal.
Yeah. Yeah, I called it a rainbow bridge story because that was just like the words that I had at the time.
Yeah.
Because I was looking into like Waldorf schools and whatnot for my children, which we've always homeschooled. I've never never really deviated from that. But
yeah.
But yeah, that was, for me, that was a good cathartic way of kind of healing what went down. And so I included that in my book, that here's the space to write your birth story before it happens, as an act of like positive visualization. And then also here's a space to write the actual stuff that happened. And then here's a space to also just write something completely, you know, like a fantasy tale told like a myth form of your birth story, because why not? We get to create our own stories.
Exactly.
And
we are in creation with a lot of stories all the time. And absolutely.
Exactly.
You're a storyteller. I know that. And
I am.
And I am too. We have a lot to, you know, but I like, it's true what you say about even the mothering. It's like, I know that I needed my community because I didn't have any generational anything, because they're all passed on. And or unwell emotionally or physically, to be supportive. And so it was this outer community of my soul people, really. It's like that was a savior, really, like savior. And
exactly.
And something else you said. Yeah, and it's like we have to call in where our support is. And I loved it from the other mothers. It was like, oh, this is so good. Or were your baby sick or not well? People want to run to the doctor. That's fine. I always say doctor, mom first. And then really the last extreme should be, I really do feel like that. The doctor they're not really the first. I feel like they're like the last. But it's very opposite in our reality. Everybody has to run and then give their body awareness away. You know, it's like, I don't know. But they know. Well, mom, especially mothers, my gosh. So intuitive.
Yeah, we all think we
but
don't.
It's okay. Yeah. Good.
I remember thinking intuition was such a sham when I was, you know, a young mom. I was like, this is not real. Because I had, I mean, I was 18 when I had my first kiddo, but already by then I had internalized so much deep, heavy messaging about, you don't know what you're talking about, Crystal. Like, you don't know what you need for your life. And just, you know, the last 20 plus years have been shedding that in so many layers, because we do know and we are intuitive, and we have just been, you know, cultured and socialized to dismiss the truth. It's in our bones.
Yeah, in our bones. I would even say over-industrialized. That's what happens.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But I love... go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just going to say that, you know, even with my first one, I was very disconnected from my body and very, like, not aware of these things. But then once I saw the two lines, like from that moment on, I never felt alone. I had this very clear awareness of, there's two of us here. Oh boy. And so it's funny because I was so trying to deny it to, like, you know, be a good, normal, regular person. and I just couldn't, even when I was trying. And so it really was, you know, a matter of getting back to trusting myself and honoring what I already knew.
I love that. You're like, okay, there's two of us in here now. What's this going to look like? Like what's being, you know, and so it's so true that, you know, conception into pregnancy is such an initiation. And I always tell women that you'll be rebirthed and there will be a death. Some people experience a death, which I call postpartum depression, by the way. And I've talked about that before with other postpartum people. I was like, but here's the thing, if we're not walked through the death and grief of it, we get clinical. And then it becomes something scary. And that's what happens. Again, it's very cultural to me, too, because no one prepares us for this rebirth. And it can be quite frightening and deep and, you know, and energizing and just so pure and love. And I felt love, I remember, in pregnancy that's how I knew I was pregnant with my first. I remember it was the first week or two in, and I had this burst of energy move through my body, and I felt the love of a mother to a child, which was very strange to me. You're making me remember this now, because I was like, what is this feeling inside me? And I was like it was so matter of fact, like not just like a thought, like, oh, I know what it's like to love a child. It literally was just in the cells of my being, and I was like, whoa, but I still didn't think I was pregnant yet. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I was like, I was literally probably 2 weeks in from conception.
Wow.
But it's interesting how our body speaks to us. And then, then it took me a few weeks. Then the physical things happen where I wake up at 3 a.m. and I was starving all of a sudden. I'm like, that's not me. That's weird.
Right.
Like something's up. And then that constipation, oh boy, it's like all this weird stuff. I'm like, what's happening in here? I'm starving, and then I can't go to bed, And then I always like to tell women, and some women fight me on this, like, don't run and go get your pregnancy test right away. I know you want to, and even just see if you can really sustain your that one. I've tested some women, and some of them thanked me for it. Others were like, I just can't. I go, but it's a great internal test of you being. Like, just wait more than a few weeks to go and then see, because tests are always wrong, and tests don't, they don't tell you sometimes when you are pregnant, and then you're like going in this weird place and you don't know. And
exactly, we're over-identifying with the test, whether it's something in pregnancy or the pregnancy test itself. Exactly, we over-identify with the test said, and then we spiral off into these weird directions that we don't need to go. Like, it doesn't benefit us.
Yeah. And I've had women come to me like, hey, the doctor said this, and what do you think? And I'm like, what do you mean, what do I think? It's like you're taking their information. And it's interesting that these people I'm thinking about, there are not a lot of people come to me with these fears, because I don't know, I'm just kind of like, you got to trust your intuition. I'm not, energy changes all the time, but these little spirit baby beings in their body, in their soul bodies, in the pregnant mom, they were okay the whole time, and they were like, I'm okay, I don't know what she's freaking out about, but I was like, okay, you're going to do your thing. And it ended up they were okay, because I said, well, what is your intuition saying? And a lot of the moms actually would say to me, well, I hear what the doctor's saying, and they want to do an MRI on a uterus. Like, I thought that sounded scary. Yeah. And she's like, but I know the baby, and he's like Earthside, he's totally fine. So like, they think there's something wrong with his brain, and who knows if there's a smudge on the computer, who knows what it was. But I think it was a test for her. In her own spiritual energy, in her heart. Is she trusting herself? And I think she does healing work now as a mom with her son.
That's so
and it's
great.
Like, who is she going to trust? Like herself or this other person? And I'm not saying to deny medical needs and intervention, but there's too much. There's too much. Like you said, we talked earlier, it's like coming back. Like, some women have certain cells in their body in the first trimester that could be scary and then lead this whole thought idea of fear. But what if you're just listening and you're letting energy move and you don't have that, and you're not having to, just kind of sink in, listen, keep listening. Yeah. But this is why I feel like a guidebook is really powerful. And I love this first. I took some notes here because I was like, I love that radical self-care. How do you define radical self-care? It sounds like good.
Oh gosh,
it sounds great.
It's kind of a play on words, because like, this shouldn't be radical.
I know, right? That's what I'm curious.
It shouldn't be radical to eat nourishing food, to move your body in ways that make you happy, to sleep when you're tired and rest when you're tired, not just sleep but rest. And I forgot the other piece. It's food and sleep and body movement.
I think
and
eating, stress, sleep. You even had stress in there too, like dealing with stress and I know it shouldn't be radical, but
it really shouldn't be radical. Like, I always think about there's an article floating around the internet, and it talks about I think the title of it is "A Woman's Greatest Challenge or Enemy is Lack of Time to Herself." And it might even say mother, not woman. But that general concept of how much, and this connects back to what you were saying about, how accommodating we are taught to be in terms of, well, the midwife would really feel better if we did this test. Or like, oh, my husband, my partner doesn't want me to free birth or whatever. How accommodating are we to everybody else in our lives? And do we actually need to do that? Because what about us? What about what we actually need? And so, like when, so my fifth baby, like I said that I had a wild pregnancy, and I attempted to have a free birth, and I ended up going to the hospital. Then I had a home birth. My fifth baby, I knew I was going to have a free birth. And my husband was very much, at first, he was very much opposed to this. He was like, I don't know, like, things were scary last time. It didn't go, the way that you wanted it to. I don't know. I don't think I'm comfortable with this. And I sat with that for a few weeks, and then I finally got angry, and I was like, look, this is my body, and this is my birth, and this is what I need to do. Like, this is what I have to do. I have to. And I really need you to be on board with me. And I was really worried that he would, come back with something negative, and he actually kind of just let my wave of rage kind of wash over him, and he was like, this is the energy we need. We're going to do a free birth. And I was like, yes. Wow. Love it. So it was like I had to come into claiming my power and my, like, fierceness about this is what I need for my self-care. This is what I need for, what this baby is asking me for, and what I've always wanted to do. And it was the most delightful, uneventful pregnancy. And then I was just in pure bliss for weeks. There's no comparison to not being poked and prodded and messed with, and like, all these different things. And we have to measure this, and, this might be a problem. And it's just so much unnecessary mental, it's like, it's stirring a pot that doesn't need to be stirred. And
I love the you call it wild birth. I like that, because I think now they've named it free birth, right? It's like this name just kind of came. I know there's Free Birth Society. Even a group.
I do like them.
A lot of. Yeah, I think it was Emily that began that. She actually lived here in the city, and I actually met with her a few times before that became something, I would even say. But even, what you're saying, I love that, because I've met people throughout the years that have done, I call it unassisted birth, but I like free birth. And they have to be very secretive about it. Like, shh, don't tell anybody. And like you said, it stirred up like your partner. And I've even said this with many, many throughout the years with couples, if they come through, and I've had one time a husband say, well, I don't want her to, I forgot what it was exactly. But I looked at him, and they were in person. I looked at him, and I was like, and he was very, I do good with very left brain kind of analytical people, because I see their energy. I'm behind it. It doesn't matter. And so I was like, I'm like, well, she owns her body, and she lives in her body, and so she makes decisions based on her body, not what your fears are, not what you think. And he got it. He was like rocked. He was rocked. He thought I was going to agree with him for her, and then and it was good. It was really healing and awesome. And then, but I've spoke about that before. I was like, who lives in your body? Like, it's you. You make the decisions. I remember with the second home birth, right? The first one was a transfer, so this hubby was a little scared. The second time, he's like, I don't know if it's, I trust something. And I looked at him, I go, you saying you don't trust me? It's fine. It's like, because I know my body, and I was like, I know what felt good, and it was a really amazing experience, and it was great. But that moment of fear that everybody feels is real, and we're all addressing it. And then it moves how it does. But, coming back to like the body, it's like the body of the person that lives in it. And this is what we don't talk enough about in pregnancy, because it's like, there's a lot of unknown things happening. It could be very uneasy, but it's like, this is where there is a practice, I feel, right? And then looking at that, or working with other people that are embodied, that have had those experiences. And I love that, your experiences have painted this whole picture, right? It's like from the first experience to the middle, and like, I feel like you're, all your work embodies, like, I'll call it high levels of intuition. But that's, I feel like that's what we're like emanating, to be like, okay, you're allowed to say no, you're allowed to do this, you're allowed to change your mind. How about that?
Right. And I feel like so much of, like, when I started teaching childbirth education, it was in 2011, and I didn't even realize how radically different I was doing it from like everybody else, because I did only women, and I had everybody sit in a circle, and we went through basically the things that are in my book. We talked about, you know, intuition and embodiment and trusting your body and trusting the process and what to expect and how maybe it doesn't have to be painful. Maybe this could be transcendent. And and when I started trying to teach childbirth education with other, you know, more mainstream birth pros in Austin and whatnot, I was really it was kind of a wake up call that that's not what they were teaching. They were teaching like, here's how to, you know, here's what to expect in the hospital, and it was just a completely different thing, and I didn't even realize. And so for a while, I kind of got turned around about like, gosh, do I maybe this is what people want? Do I change my stuff and, you know, talk more about these mundane aspects? And I've come to believe that actually the stuff that we talk about, this is the core. This is like 90% of it. And it's ideally, we don't need, like, knowing all the different, you know, memorizing the cervical dilation chart or something. That's not going to help you in labor. That's not going to, it's not going to help you to have a better, more connected, more confident birth experience. But what is going to help you is to be connecting on a deeper, more intuitive level with your baby, with your body, with your, you know, ancestral line, like motherly wisdom that is passed down through generations. And maybe you'll have to dig for it. Maybe it's not, you know, a direct thing, but that's the stuff that matters. And it's just so wild how we're told that it's like measurements and test results and
And something you said, it just kind of popped in my mind was, I remember years ago we were supposed to do a birth education class with my firstborn, and we never got to do it. So I never had whatever that means. I never had birth education. And recently, and then of course with the second, I was like, it doesn't matter. Yeah, that's what I think was my energy and reality. I was better not knowing anything, and I even didn't read a lot with the first birth because I felt like it was better for me. So I think I only read like 2 books or something. And so then recently someone said to me, it was like recent, I forgot if it was at a podcast or a client, it was like, you never did birth education class? Like it was, and I said, actually, no, I didn't. I'm like thinking, you know, because think about it, like we talked earlier, it was the generations that helped the next women. It was the other women that helped the next women, not having, like you said, the charts, checking the boxes. And I get it. It can be really scary. And I do hope that birth education is changing, right, to get more, let's get embodied, and it could be fun and connect with other people, less of like, okay, let's put a desk in the room and like, but it's funny to reflect on that now. I wanted to, I really did, but the woman chanced the last minute, and I was already going to give birth soon, and I was like, oh, well, I'll just see what happens.
Divine intervention.
I'm sure I could do this.
It's so funny how I really think that was probably, you know, that was the universe conspiring in your favor without you knowing it. And I really, that's one of the things I so encourage people, you know, whatever happens to you, you get the choice to reframe it as, is this a problem? Is this a bummer? Or is this actually an invitation to shift your thinking? And maybe this is a gift. You know, whatever it could be, even if it sounds like you're an alchemist. That's what they call that. You take the story, right, and then you alchemize it into going, okay, like let's see where that goes. Right? You ever think about that? Where's the juicy goodness in here?
Yes.
And it's funny too, as you're talking about childbirth education, I do have a confession to make. I did enroll in, you know, childbirth educator school, and I never finished it because it just didn't feel connected.
Oh yeah. And you do it now, so it doesn't really matter.
And I've been doing it. It's good. At the time I enrolled and I paid for this training because I thought I had to, like, you know, validate who I was. And over the years I've realized, like, no, actually, I don't think it makes a difference because, like, the stuff that I'm teaching is just, it's different. It's holistic. It's intuitive. It's woman-centered. And, you know, I'm sure you've seen that there's a very alarming trend that they are trying to scrub all mention of the feminine from childbirth education now in an effort to be progressive.
That's what I hear.
Which breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It doesn't I feel like there's
it's a good way to raise robots and people obedience. I mean, we all know that. Like, it's a good way not to minimize other subcultures of origin, but it's very weird right now. It's like, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, and so
I never realized I was such a radical, you know.
You're so radical. Like, you're bringing in the feminine. Like, we've been working this how many centuries in this reality? Come on. Yeah.
Right. Well, and it's, you know, the more it's like I haven't shifted, but somehow I find myself standing in the radical camp, and I've been doing this whole feminine birth thing for, you know, a good decade at least.
You were doing it when people were like, they wanted it, but they were probably scared of it. But now I feel like it's like there's such a, you know, a welcoming, and there's no shame in like, oh, I took birth. I love that you like went in, went out. But I did the same thing with my clinical psychology studies. You know, I went into that and I was like, what am I going to become a psychotherapist after this? And I was like, I don't think so. My husband was like, what do you mean you're not? Like, isn't that what you, and I go, something's not working for me. And he's like, but this is what you, and I go, yeah, but you know what? I changed my mind. This energy doesn't support, I really felt like that frequency cannot support me. That doesn't matter. I can't force myself into something. And I'm glad I listened, because then I created all this. This is what I created. You know, it's spirit, baby, everything. That wouldn't have been created. So, you know, I love these stories of like how people kind of stepped into really their own internal creative wisdom, because that literally, my gosh, that is future. That is future now, I should say. That is the world. Look at people have YouTube channels, and, you know, they're sustaining their life through their own creative endeavors, whether they want to go on a training, certification, or, you know, go to college. It's like there's no like it has to be a certain way, right? It's like that's where I feel like we're coming into empowerment, into self-authenticity, and to being like, you know, self-directed. I like that. And so I love that you shared that. So what are you doing these days? And you know, what are you doing? And besides, you have this book, and I noticed you have a lot of programs.
I do. I have a lot of things that I've created, and all my stuff has hand-drawn art or paintings or ink or whatever, because art was part of my catharsis and my therapy as I went through pregnancies. My logo, and there's like a black and white sketch of a pregnant woman. That is actually probably a 4-foot tall piece in charcoal that I have. You know, my child taught me how to edit it on the iPad to kind of. Oh
yeah, of course, I totally understand that.
But but that the original piece was really just, you know, a quick 5-minute scribble sketch of, you know, the energy that was pouring out of me when I was 9+ months pregnant with my last baby, and that was part of, you know, you could say that was my childbirth education, was connecting through art and things like that. And so all my programs have art, and, you know, and there's even invitations to make art in some of my programs, and you know, as a way to connect with your intuitive awareness. And I'm really, really so proud that I got my book finally published. And by published, I mean you can get a physical copy, and it's kind of like, it's a book, it's a proper book, like you can read the book, but there's plenty of space for writing and drawing your own things in it. And so it was important to me to have like a physical copy. And that's available absolutely everywhere. It's in all the booksellers. You can search for it, and it's even in Australia and Europe, and, you know, because I really wanted to reach people who are interested in alternate ways of giving birth. But I think it would be just as suited for somebody who finds themselves birthing in the system. It's just so many women are birthing in the system and don't actually want to be, but they just don't see another option out. So, yeah, I'm figuring out how to tell people about my book, because apparently I have a gift for creating things, and then the sharing of them does not nearly come as naturally to me. So, and I'm gonna be running like drop in either on Zoom or in person classes called Birthing in Power. And it's really just, again, getting back to that women's circle intuitive style prenatal classes for people who are wanting an alternate experience. And
I love it.
I garden and I do art and I unschool my children.
Wonderful. I'm just going through here. I want to read some of these quotes in your book, if I may. I love these.
Of course.
When I saw the colors in your book, and my head goes to, ooh, this could be a deck of cards. That's where I go with it.
Yes.
This does So this one is, I'm attuned to the divine guidance of my own inner wisdom. What an amazing reminder. Okay. And it has this beautiful image. It's like a little, this is what you'll see spread through the book too. One here says, Laborland is a place of in-between where the wisdom of ancestors may sing in your bones.
Yeah.
Let me see. Scrolly down here. Birth is not an emergency. It is simply an emergence. Janine Cavardi Baker. Yeah.
Yes.
Like looking at these things helps when you're in pregnancy.
Yeah. For me, like I'm a word person. I love words, and I've come to realize over the years that sometimes words aren't quite what we need, but I still like them, and I still am looking for exactly the right quote or, saying to communicate the things that are on our hearts.
So here, I'm going to read this final one, and then I'm going to have you share just ways people can order your book. I know you said it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere that sells a book, probably through Ingram, maybe through the hub,
Definitely.
And then your website. But so right here we go. It says, becoming a mother greatly increases our capacity for love, but it's also a little scary. It's like agreeing to let a piece of your heart go and to live forever outside of your body. Absolutely, yes.
And it's amazing, like, the capacity, because I'm an only child. I'm an only child of only children.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then I had 5 kids. And I remember crying when I was pregnant with my second one because I was so sad for my firstborn that he wasn't going to be an only child. I loved being an only child, and I couldn't imagine how much more my heart was going to shatter and expand and break open.
So wonderful.
Many thousands of times.
Yeah. Oh, yes. But yeah, how can we find your book, share your website, if you have Instagram or whatever you want to share, ways that we can get this book?
I do. Thank you. So I am Birth Awakening on Instagram, and Instagram is pretty much the only social media I'm active on. I have a blog at crystaltrammel.com, and it's hosted through Substack, which is like a really cool platform. So all you have to do is sign up for emails, and then you get my blogs in your inbox. And I really like Substack because it's censorship-free, etc. And then my main website is rethinkbirth.com, and that's where you can find all of my different creations. And if you want a signed copy of my book, you can get that on my website at rethinkbirth.com/book. And you'll get, as book bonuses, literally all the stuff I've ever created, and a physical copy and a digital copy of the book, and it will be signed. So, yeah. And that is, I only have so many of those offers, so I only have so many of those left. So once it's up, it's up. But yeah, I would love to get my work shared more widely, because I really just, it feels like something that I had to create. It's a gift to the world. Yeah. I want more and more women to be empowered and, feel like pregnancy is not something to cope with, but something to thrive through. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Crystal, for being here and sharing.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
Yeah. And I want to thank everybody for joining episode 141, Radical Self-Love, Pregnancy Intuition and Visualization. If you like my podcast, please subscribe, leave reviews. Also, join my newsletter for meditation on soul-to-soul communication with baby. And please check out my book. It's a journal, Sacred Communication, a Spirit Baby Journal, and Spirit Baby Oracle Cards, Answers from Spirit Baby.
This is Spirit Baby Radio. Thank you for joining Kelly in the energy of awareness, love, healing, and soul communication. Please join the next episode at www.soulbabycommunication.com.